Welcome to the No Ceilings March Madness live show. I'm Tyler Metcalf. Joining me today are Stephen Gillaspie, Jam Hines. We're going to recap Saturday's games, preview Sunday's slate. A lot going on, a lot of really awesome basketball, but more importantly, fellas, the refs showing up in a big way. Just a dominant performance from them all day. Didn't matter opponent, didn't matter location, didn't matter game time. They showed up and we got to watch them work. If NBA fans complain about refs all the time, but my God, college refs are just the worst. That Wisconsin BYU game, the St. John's Arkansas game, just ruining great games all over the place. Fellas, how we doing? Jam, hanging in there?
Hanging in there, as you, I can't really follow. It's tough to follow that, but honestly, the refs kind of ruined some things throughout the course of the day, unfortunately, with this beautiful sacred time for all of us, but hopefully we get a more cleanly officiated game today and throughout the rest of the tournament.
Steven, how we doing?
Man, Metcalf, we're going to talk about some specific games here soon, but I thought I was going to get called for a charge on my way to the bathroom this morning when I got out of bed. So it was a fun game of basketball yesterday. But yeah, the refs were all over the place as per usual, but it didn't stop me from enjoying the games. I'm excited to see what today looks like, and hopefully the refs are on load management.
Despite the refs, we had some incredible basketball games yesterday. We got some really fun ones coming up today too. We're going to recap yesterday's games, preview today's, talk about some of the biggest prospects to watch, some potential upsets, all that good stuff. Let's just start out recapping yesterday, looking at just one of the teams that just took care of business. This was kind of the only blowout, and I only had one game in this section. I thought the rest were mostly really good games. But Purdue over McNeese, 76-62. Braden Smith looked really solid. Trey Kaufman-Renn, I thought, was the kind of dominant storyline here. Any kind of big picture thoughts on this game, Stephen?
I mean, the notes are Trey Kaufman-Renn is just an absolute beast. I love listening to him post game too. He's just so dialed in all the time, so intelligible with his way of breaking down the game. Just the way that he speaks about their performances, what they're focused on, what he needs to get better at, it completely matches up with the game, and you rarely ever see that from a college athlete. I'm so impressed with his ability just to not be huge, but be big enough to be such a force in so many different matchups. He's very quick too, laterally for his position as well, and that gives Purdue so many options that they can go to. But they were just funneling the ball to him, and he's really making himself a case to be a potential NBA guy, whether it be second round, whether it be two-way contract or in Exhibit 10, something along those lines. I'm thoroughly impressed with just how productive that he can be when he is like the focal point on a scouting report with a bullet.
Jam, we kind of previewed this game yesterday, but the story with this team is just Braden Smith dictating everything, and that two-man game between him and Trey Kaufman-Renn, who ended up with 22 points, 15 rebounds, was just moving the ball all over the place out of the short roll. I don't think any of us think these guys are draftable this year, maybe next year, but even just from a college basketball standpoint, both of those guys returning as a duo as seniors could be absolutely devastating in the Big Ten next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, don't want to look too far ahead, but them coming back, that duo, possibly top 5 team coming back next year, and a team that could really run through the Big Ten, a very tough conference, obviously, next year as well. And Stephen, as you mentioned with Trey Kaufman-Renn, just so efficient. He makes it look easy at times. Just the combination of strength and the touch he has on the rim, the patented push shot that he has in a short roll, like he's just a fantastic college player. And I'm excited just to kind of see how he continues to grow and what that looks like for him throughout the rest of the tournament and next year as he molds himself into an NBA player.
That game felt pretty straightforward. Let's just go on to the you almost had it. Teams where the upset was almost there. Favorite team held on, and it was the the one seed just kind of hanging on. Auburn over Creighton. Auburn ended up pulling away late, but Creighton was up at half. Auburn ends up kind of executing a little more down the stretch, knocking down their free throws and coming away with an 82-70 win. And then Houston over Gonzaga, 81-76. Houston had a solid lead all game and then got really tight down the stretch, especially once Gonzaga started throwing out that 1-3-1 kind of half-court trap with Ajayi up top. I was really surprised with how kind of tight and tentative and kind of panicked almost that Houston looked, and we're not used to seeing that. But LJ Cryer, my goodness, what a game with was 30 points. And then Graham Ike on the other side with 27, 8 of 13 shooting and knocking down a couple threes as well. Steven, let's start with that Houston Gonzaga game. What were your kind of takeaways? What impressed you the most in that game?
It was just the overall game was so impressive. It felt much bigger of a game than, the round of 32 that it ended up being. I think that with Houston getting out of this game, you have to think that their confidence is on 11 right now, because that's like a Final Four quality game that they just played, and they walked away, relatively unscathed. Houston did a really good job. Cryer obviously is being automatic. Uzan didn't really have a great first half, but came along in the second, really facilitated well, was able to knock down a couple of big-time shots. And then our guy JoJo Tugler was pretty solid in spots. I wish that he was a little bit more consistent, but that's what they got Roberts for in the second half. Roberts started hitting some of those, TKR-esque push shots that he's just been so good at. That left spin hook is almost automatic. You just got to feel like with Houston walking away with that win, with Huff having some nice moments, with Ike obviously just being so daggum strong. He just seemed like he was the Houston Cougar type player that Houston covets, you know what I mean? Where scrappy, strong, able to play good defense, but just a bulldozer in the front court offensively. It was just a really fun game, Jim. I don't know how you walked away from it, but if I'm Houston, I'm thinking no one can beat me.
Yeah, absolutely. It was arguably the game of the night. It was good to see Gonzaga kind of get back into the game. And Tyler, as you mentioned as well, just when Gonzaga went to the zones to kind of throw things off for Houston and absolutely work, we aren't accustomed to see them having to look a little bit flustered in the half court against something like that, because they're just usually always so well organized on both ends of the court. Obviously, LJ Cryer leads the way for them, hitting shots off movement from three, mid-range as well. Juwan Roberts being himself, being the glue guy. Love his ability on the glass as well, despite someone who's not going to out-jump anyone really. Like, he just knows how to track down balls. He plays with a good motor, had a couple times where he chased down balls, kicked it out. One time for a big three as well. So I really do like what he can do. I think he's going to be someone that should certainly be on the G League radar. And then on the opposite end, Braden Hupp, I thought, was pretty impressive throughout the game. Showed that inside-outside ability, stepped out, hit the three, had a nice short roll push shot as well. So I really do think that really, obviously Gonzaga underseeded in this tournament, but I think they have to be very excited with what their showing was these past couple games, and hopefully they will get a better break next year, because it was really a tough draw for them.
On the Gonzaga side, Ike was obviously the big producer. I came away really impressed with Ryan Nembhard's just kind of continued development as that pure point guard, the playmaking, the decision-making, even just going back to not only last year, but the year before that, and just how much the game has slowed down for him. Really, really impressive stuff. But from a draft standpoint, I think the only kind of names for this year, at least, are on the Houston side with JoJo Tugler, who is just a monster on the boards, covered a ton of ground, obviously got pulled late because of offensive issues and free throws and all that kind of stuff. But him, Emmanuel Sharp, Milos Uzan, he kind of had a tough scoring game, had a handful of shots just kind of rim out. But I thought his decision-making was like 8 assists to 2 turnovers. He got a little tight down the stretch, but overall his decision-making, the passing accuracy is all really, really impressive. Emmanuel Sharp's off-ball scoring and shooting and ability to kind of attack closeouts. But I really feel like the story of this game, and it's something that Houston has always leaned on during the Kelvin Sampson tenure, is offensive rebounding. And they had 13 compared to just 5 for Gonzaga, and Gonzaga had 22 total defensive rebounds, and Houston had 13 offensive rebounds. It's huge. Totally shifted the kind of tide of things, and that's something that is pure energy and attitude and effort based. And that's something, even when shots aren't falling, even when LJ Cryer isn't dropping 30 points, that they can take from game to game to game and makes them such a handful to deal with.
Yeah, that's a good shout too, Metcalf. Like, that's like a coaching type analysis, bringing up that offensive rebound, because as soon as you mentioned that, I'm just thinking, how many points did LJ Cryer get on relocation threes after an offensive rebound? That was huge for that team too. So good call by you. Also, if we're going to shout out other players, Cleef Battle for Gonzaga had a good first game, and then even in this game had some huge buckets. Played for Arkansas. I'm still a pretty big fan of him. The emotion that you saw from him after that game, just knowing like what's over now, it's easily made fun of by a lot of people, especially in the social media era. But I love seeing an athlete just be that passionate about the game, and he left it all out on the floor. So shout out to him.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the next kind of group of games, the survive and advance portion. I had 3 games in here. Had Tennessee over UCLA 67-58. Just kind of felt like a typical Tennessee game of get up by 7 to 10 points, hold that lead basically throughout, and just kind of grind down the other team. Texas Tech over Drake 77-64. They ended up kind of pulling away, but Drake kept that close for a lot of the game, just kind of couldn't get over that final hump. And then Michigan over Texas A&M, technically an upset, but 4-5 matchup, close enough. Really fun game, 91-79. Jam, out of those 3, which one do you kind of want to start with?
Let's start with Michigan and Texas A&M.
Go for it.
Honestly, I'm going to start on the losing end, but Farrell Payne, you talked about him yesterday, and I mean, Major Payne, right? That guy has to be the nickname. Like, he's just an incredible athlete, long, athletic. You see how he's going to project to the NBA physically, can jump the Neptune. Just his play finishing, how efficient that he's been. And he really took it to both Golden and also Danny Wolf going into their chest. He showed a couple nice moves at the rim, being able to extend and finish off the glass, a jump hook as well. So I think he's been an incredible tournament story, and it's someone I think who will deserve, should and does deserve more eyes on him heading into next year. So I was very excited to see him kind of break out during this run. And then Danny Wolf being Danny Wolf on the other end, just the live dribble playmaking is always fantastic. He's on the glass, and along with Golden, that was just an incredible combination for them guys to really help dominate and lead the game. And then Roddy Gale coming off the bench being that spark. So I thought it was a really well-played game on both ends.
I love that you shouted out Farrell Payne, because 26 points, just a bully. And I got to see him up close a couple times over the last few years when he was up here in Minnesota. And when you kind of think about the Minnesota team this year and how much they struggled, and then you look at, they lost both Elijah Hawkins, who's killing it for Tech this year, and Farrell Payne, who's killing it for A&M this year. And now Ben Johnson's out of a job here. It's like, oh man, that transfer portal is brutal, but you live and you die by it. He was fantastic though, all game, just a physical monster on the interior. Vlad Golden, 23, 12, and 3 blocks, really solid. Was getting bullied early on, kind of found his footing later on. But really also have to shout out Roddy Gale, who finally found his shot. Hell of a time to do it. He's shooting like 20% from 3 on the year. He was incredible off the bench today. 26 on Saturday, excuse me. 26 points, 7 of 14 shooting, 4 of 6 from 3, and 8 for 8 from the free throw line. He was the difference maker. Without him, they have almost no production from their backcourt. Steven, what kind of stood out to you in this game?
Yeah, the guard play for Michigan is pretty concerning. I know that that's something that you have been lamenting all season long, Metcalf, but you got to be encouraged by the fire and ice play of Golden and Wolf. I think that was one of the better games that I've seen both of them be on at the same time. You even got to see Danny Wolf do some big man things. You know, he walked away with some good rebounds. He walked away with some block shots and things like that against a really athletic A&M team. So got to be encouraged by some of the defensive consistency that you saw from Wolf in that game. And then Vlad Golden, I think that he has a real shot to be an NBA player at some capacity. I don't know where ultimately an NBA team feels comfortable taking him, whether that be in the draft or some sort of Exhibit 10 or anything like that. But he's just such a big guy, dude. He carves out lanes well. He rebounds, blocks shots. His hands are so good too, you know, and when you got two big men with good hands like that, to where you have Wolf driving and attacking the basket, where he's making those whip around baseline passes to the backcourt, and then that ball finds its way back inside to Vlad Golden. That's a recipe for success. A&M did scrap hard. I love the Pharrell Payne shout out as well. He just seems like such an A&M big man, where he's a little undersized, but he's super athletic, very bouncy, very strong, and is not afraid to bring the force to anybody. It was a super fun game.
I also want to shout out LJ Kaysen as like a next year or 2 years down the road guy.
Yeah.
The way he's improved throughout the year is really, really impressive. I think he's so chaotic, and you can't really trust him right now because he's a chaotic freshman, but just unlimited confidence, fascinating shot maker, pretty fun playmaker. I think as a sophomore next year, he could have a really, really, really big leap. But a couple other numbers that really stood out to me in this game. Michigan kind of dared A&M to make shots and, force them to go out to the perimeter. They couldn't do it. A&M shot 38% overall, 25.9% from three. And that was the concern with this team all year. And when it came down to it, that's kind of what killed them. A&M only had 8 turnovers, but they only forced 9 for Michigan. And Michigan is one of the least ball, they're one of the worst teams at taking care of the ball all year. And to only force 9 turnovers after we just saw them really struggle with that against UC San Diego, it's tough. So that physicality and the rebounding and impact was there from A&M, but they didn't really force or make Michigan uncomfortable, which kind of an indictment in my eyes. And speaking of physicality, let's move over to that Texas Tech Drake game. I thought Bennett Sturts was awesome yet again, but JT Top and Darian Williams came to play and just imposed themselves on a much smaller Drake team.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Williams and Toppin, they combined for, I think, close to, if not over 50 between the two of them. I can't remember the exact scores, but they were both
25 and 27. I think
that's what I remember.
Both were over 25.
Yeah, I knew it was around there, but super impressive performance by Williams in particular. Because why his performance stands out the most to me is that we knew that the game plan coming into this was that if Tech wanted to win, they were going to need to feed Toppin. It was good just to get that supplementary scoring outburst, and as well as the playmaking, rebounding, and defense that Darian Williams brought. And we just saw Drake's, perimeter players really struggle with whoever he was lined up across. They didn't really have an opportunity to see a player like him, even in the non-conference when they had some bigger games. Darian Williams is just such a fantastic player in multiple regards. No disrespect to JT Toppin, who was just on fire all night long. Drake just didn't have the front court to really contest him, and that was kind of the fear coming into this game if you were a Drake fan, that Toppin was just going to be playing over your head for the duration of the night, and that's pretty much what he did.
Yeah, that 4-5 combo, Toppin and Williams, they just really dominated, as you said. It was nothing that Drake and that squad could really do about it. And just want to give a shout out to my guy from the DMV, Elijah Hawkins, controlling things for that Texas Tech team. 16.7 assists, no turnovers, knocking down 3 of 6 from 3, getting the lane, playing his game. And he's going to be a key cog for them as they continue to move forward, especially as Christian Anderson continues to kind of, with any freshman, kind of go up and down in the tournament. But him and Kerwin Walton continue to provide that spark on the perimeter with Elijah Hawkins as well.
And 11 free throw attempts for Hawkins, too, where even when the shot's not necessarily falling, that playmaking's still there, and he's still getting to the rim and getting paint touches and collapsing the defense and using that shiftiness to get guys off their feet and then draw that contact. So just really, really experienced and crafty and creative play from him, and we've seen that from him all season. Where are you guys at in terms of draft stock with the tech guys? I really like Christian Anderson as a next year guy. He's struggled so far in this tournament, to be expected. But Darren Williams, JT Toppin, Elijah Hawkins, even, do you see any of these guys as like legitimate 2025 potential first rounders, or maybe more of a next year guy or second round flyer?
I think this year for both Williams and Toppin, I think that it's a luxury that they can kind of play it either direction for them, because we've been talking about this all year long, but the latter half of the first round on in this year's draft class, we're still just kind of waiting for people to step up and say, I'm that guy, like draft me. And I think both of these guys have capitalized on the spotlight that the tournament is bringing to their draft stock, especially Toppin. This was a big stock boost for him. When you look at the big men in this class, we're going to talk about some other guys later, but there's 2-3 surefire guys this year in the front court that you really feel good about. Toppin is really bringing that small ball five, rebounding, shot blocking, rim running, screen setting. He checks a lot of boxes. He's not the prototypical size that you want to see from a 5-man, but he does gives a team a different look that they can utilize, especially during the regular season. He's high energy, high motor, high character, a guy that if I'm drafting in the second round, why wouldn't I want to take a shot on this guy? And then Williams, the only thing that he's really missing is like a consistent outside shot. We talked about a guy like RJ Lewis throughout the year. Darren Williams kind of plays a similar game, but slightly different flavor, I would say. But another guy that, depending on the way people come back or withdraw from this class, he could play the long game and really end up being a second round guy and being in the NBA next year.
Yeah, completely agree. Both of those guys could and should be, depending what the feedback is. I would imagine if both of them don't get first round guaranteed, it's like, all right, let's come back, make another run at this, maybe go back to back, depending what this tournament run looks like for them, and collect on NIL. But I see them both as potential draft picks. With Toppin, I have him higher. Just I think it's the easy role for him is that energy big right off the bench, play finishing, block shots, rebound. You can drop him in from day one. He's ready to roll.
And then, not to bury the lead, but talk of the town right now. Hottest name on the streets, Bennett Sturts from Drake. And he's terrific again. 21 points, 8 assists, just 1 turnover. Did this change anything? And it's another big test against a really physical, athletic, good, well-rounded team. Jam, did this kind of change anything in the way that you're seeing or scouting or projecting Sturts to the next level and kind of where his draft stock is right now?
Not really, honestly. It's just another data point, in the long line of data points that we're collecting throughout the season and just, historically with prospects. But it is a great lasting impression, a last impression as he's going to leave in this tournament run. Obviously, what he can do as a scorer, the confidence, the fluidity, operating dribble handoffs, pick and rolls, the floor game. I believe had 8 assists in this game as well, to one turnover. So you really like just the poise and the shooting that he does bring. The athleticism, it kind of is what it is. Hopefully he tests to be a better athlete than kind of some of the things that he's shown on film. I don't think he's a terrible athlete by any means, but that's not what he's going to be out there for. I thought that he does compete defensively. I would say they hid him in this game, so to speak, but he was allowed on Kerwin Walton playing off the ball. He's not going to be someone that you have at the point of attack, but I think he does have a fairly clean role when projecting to the next level, and probably one of the more interesting stay or go decisions in this class.
Yeah, and I feel like at this point, I don't know how you return to school unless you're getting just an insane NIL offer. Which who knows, maybe. But like, how is his draft stock really significantly going to change between this year and next year, where Like, we know he's an awesome playmaker. We know that he can kind of get to wherever he wants. He's a solid shooter. He's a versatile scorer. Like, yeah, he needs to improve in the mid-range a little bit, but is him all of a sudden developing like some crafty mid-range game going to elevate his draft status all that much compared to what he could risk, obviously with injury, or just if he has even takes half a step back or just has a very similar year next year? So like, maybe you've already peaked, maybe you've plateaued already, and there's not much more to get out of you. I don't see necessarily the benefit in returning to school next year. Do you, Steven?
He would have to do something that I don't know if he would want to based on what we've already seen, and that would be transferring to a major program like a blue blood school, like a Duke or a UConn or something like that. And so much has been made about his relationship with the coach there at Drake. And I think the coach would have to say, like, get away, you big dumb animal. Can't you see I don't want you anymore? And then cry. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Or he gets a major promotion or something,
He could. He very well could. I just don't think that if he comes back, it shouldn't be at Drake, because I don't, like, to your point, Metcalf, I don't think that does anything for him. But maybe he pulls a Coach DeVries, right, and follows his coach to somewhere else and improve his stock. I'm trying to figure out where I am with him on the Jimmer Fredette, Steph Curry spectrum, and I think it's somewhere in like that Austin Reeves territory, maybe. And there's value in that, right? Especially in this year's class, again, where we keep beating up the latter half of the first round. A lot of people like him top 10. A lot of people like him in the lottery. There's some people, some pretty prominent names out there that think that he should go back. And that's a lot to have to weigh and measure and figure out what you want to do if you're Bennett Sturts. I think that he's kind of playing with house money, so to speak. Yeah. The worst thing that I think he could do is come back to Drake and just kind of play in the dark again and be a forgotten name until the NCAA tournament rolls around. Like, that's what I would be worried about the most.
Yeah, agreed. His pre-draft stuff in terms of workouts and combine is going to be fascinating. Last thing on this group, Tennessee over UCLA. Surprising 18 turnovers by Tennessee, but they're able to survive it. Just no shot making from UCLA. Chaz Lanier with another Chaz Lanier game, 24-2 on 6 of 14 shooting, 4 of 5 from outside. Any big picture thoughts with this game or no?
Jam, what do you got, brother?
I mean, not really. Like you said, just Chaz Lanier leading the way, the best prospect in that matchup. Him just doing his thing, shots off the dribble, movement, the confidence, the deep range. Like he's Chaz Lanier, and someone who should really be considered early in that second round. I wouldn't be surprised if he sneaks up into that later half of the first, honestly.
I was really impressed with him too. And I'm sorry, Metcalf, just on the other side, Bilodeau just kind of did some fun things. Damara, who was a guy that a lot of people liked a lot, showed some really interesting flashes. It seems like he's moving a little bit more comfortably on the court too. And that just might be a thing that he's done throughout most of the season. I just haven't, to be 100% honest, watched a lot of UCLA. So I found some of the stuff that he did interesting, but he still just looks like a stretched out child out there on the court still. And he really needs to improve that strength, which I think will help with the coordination and footwork and things like that. But Bilodeau was good. Sky Clark did some typical Sky Clark hitting some threes thing. But big shout out to Swaggy Chaz Lanier out there staying down for it. He is on fire. He looks so big for his size. He's almost built like a fire hydrant. I love his relocation, playing off of others. He just dominated that game. He's proving to be a very real prospect.
Let's move on to the fun stuff. Upset City. We got to start out. Arkansas taking down St. John's 75-66. A lot going on in this game. Jam, tough timing to break out the RJ Lewis is a lottery pick take.
I'm standing strong, though. We're standing strong. 10 toes down.
10 toes.
Got to.
It was like a shockingly bad outlier game for him, and he was horrific. and he couldn't make a shot. He wasn't boxing out, couldn't defend, and then got benched for most of the second half. And Patino came out with the excuse of, "Oh, you played 30 minutes. That's a lot." It's like
It was so odd.
there's something else
It
going on
was.
there. It's like he played 37 minutes like 4 days ago against Marquette. Seemed fine then. I think he
Yeah.
averages like 33 on the year or something, and it's the Big East Player of the Year. And you benched him for the first 6 minutes of the second half, and then the final 5. It was bizarre. Like, I get that he couldn't buy a shot and he was bad, but what are we doing?
Yeah, that was tough. Yeah, tough time by me. Tough performance by RJ as well. And I was just really baffled by some of the shots that he took and really forcing some things, especially on drives when there's no driving lanes and still trying to
Yeah.
create something. So I don't know if he was just feeling the pressure of the moment maybe a little bit, with the way the game was being reffed and, they aren't hitting shots. Nobody on the squad is hitting shots. Multiple people battling in foul trouble as well. Wiltshire seemed like he never could get a rhythm. Neither could Kadari Richmond as well. It was just tough all around. I'm still going to believe in the long-term resume of him, but it's just not the way you want to kind of leave your last game. Shout out to Ruben Prey as well. 13 minutes. I thought he moved well out there. Had a couple of nice moments. A good long-term guy to really monitor there. And then just quickly on the Arkansas side, Carter Knox at both ends of the floor. Loved him being aggressive, even when he was missing shots. Like, that was just fantastic to see. Trevor Brazil with some really good moments on the glass and as a finisher as well. And maybe I buried the lead a little bit, but Billy Richmond was just absolutely dynamite. Just the two-way potential that he has there, and he's really emerging as someone that's going to be probably the X factor for Arkansas down the stretch here.
On St. John's real quick too, Zuby Ejiofor
Of
was
course.
terrific. Why they weren't just feeding him late too, especially when Adu's out
Yeah.
there with 4 fouls, who also had a very good game yet again. He's been killing it these last 4 or 5 games. I think he's averaging just under 20. But Zuby was the only guy who could get boards, who could get points, who could finish, who could score, draw fouls. He was a monster. I do think that the big story from this game is the freshman on the Arkansas side with Carter Knox, Billy Richmond, and I thought Boogie Flan played a really solid game too. Billy Richmond is a guy that I've loved going back to like his junior year in high school, where it's like watching all that DJ Wagner film, and every game is coming away really intrigued with this Richmond kid. I'm like, why are we talking about DJ? No offense to DJ Wagner, who also had a very good game, but it's like, God, this Billy Richmond kid is fun, and he just plays like a psychopath. So, Steven, apologies for kind of putting you on the back burner here, but your Arkansas Razorbacks with a big win. Thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to save the fan for last. I would have been ranting for a long time, but Wu Pig Sui in full force, Calipari with an excellent performance in back-to-back games against some big-time coaches and big-time blue blood programs. I'm just thoroughly impressed with DJ Wagner. I know that he's probably not the NBA prospect that we're all going to be talking about for Arkansas, maybe, but he had some really good decision-making. He was really the steadying force on the team, where Carter Knox played with a lot of emotion and aggression. Same with Billy Richmond. And Boogie Flan, I think that he's probably, of the 3 freshmen, the more reserved. He had a couple of weird ticky-tack fouls, and you could tell that he wanted to play a little bit more reserved. But I think DJ Wagner being that steadying hand, that steadying force, when all else fails, you give him the ball, get him in a pick and roll set, and you knew that he was going to make a good decision. It was just so much fun to see. I'm really looking forward to the future with this team. I know, Metcalf, I texted you about this on the side, but I think with Acuff coming in next year, if we can keep Knox and keep Richmond, that is going to be a terrifying squad next year. We still got a few games left to play. I think with the way that the discourse is talking, they're celebrating Calipari right now. It almost feels like we're expected to lose next round. And it's just like, let's give this man some flowers now. We've kind of captured lightning in a bottle. I don't think that we could have won this game if we had Musselman. And I know that we've kind of moved away from that discourse. The way that we've won these last 2 games, I think Musselman might have got us a costly technical. in with the way that, especially the way this game was officiated. I don't think that Musselman would have had his head on the level that Calipari had. And that's a big thing. Coaching is obviously very important in college basketball. And it kind of showed itself in this game. I was really impressed with Calipari's decision making, how composed he was, even though he wanted to come out there and protect his players with how chippy the game got at times, especially with Brazil and Ejiofor going at each other. They were kind of like the underlying theme in this game, their matchup. And shout out to Ejiofor. Zuby is legit, dude. Like he is super duper good.
Well, and speaking of chippy, BYU coming out on top against Wisconsin, 91-89. Again, just bizarre refereeing. That flagrant 2 ejection was one of the most ridiculous calls I've ever seen. Keita was getting into it with Gilmore, I believe it was, at the end of the game. He was waving him off the court. It was super chippy all around. John Tanji's flopping all over the place trying to get every foul call, and he got most of them as he ended up with 37, 4-4, and 14 of 16 from the line. But this BYU offense is just cruising. Their activity, their shot making, their ball movement, I think is so impressive. And when you get your bigs with Traore and Keita playing like they are, along with Richie Saunders, who just can't miss a shot, and Yegor Demon's playmaking, they're incredibly fun right now.
Yeah, easily. Appreciate it. Yeah, chippy was the way to put it. I think the perfect encapsulation of how chippy it was when Blackwell scored, stood right in front of Igor, and Yegor was like, dude, back up. Like, please give me some breathing space. He said it in a much not nice way. And then he went down and drilled a 3 in his face. And that was probably my favorite series of Yegor Demon all season long, with just the attitude that he brought to the game and kind of bucks that, European players are soft, label that people put on them. And I'm very impressed with Yegor. I'm still kind of perplexed with him. I know we have a lot of fans that know ceilings. The shooting efficiency is consistently been what it is. The rebounding, though, the defense and the facilitation, he gives you enough to make him the polarizing prospect and enigmatic player that he is, because he does so many things well that it kind of overlooks the shooting inefficiencies that he brings to the table. But overall, BYU was really, really strong. The whole team moves the ball really well, too. Yeah. I know Yegor gets a lot of the nod in that regard, but the ball stays hopping, and their big men are super efficient, super strong, and take really good care of the ball. So it was a fun game. Tanjay, I don't know how y'all feel about him as a prospect long term. He kind of gives me Denzel Valentine vibes a little bit with his size and his propensity to get to the basket. I see why people are intrigued. I'm almost kind of talking myself into maybe like Exhibit 10, maybe second round territory with him, just because he's on 11 the whole time, gas pedal down the entire time, finds his way to the basket. It's very strong. I know he might be a flash in the pan, but with the way that the rest of this class looks, like he's kind of making a very strong case for himself.
Yeah, he's definitely doing that. 6'5" or 6'4", somewhere in that range. Solid build, can knock down shots, and like we talked about yesterday, he absolutely is just take advantage of his opportunity here with Wisconsin to the max, and that's what you want to do, especially in your final campaign. So I was very excited. He kind of quietly, to me, had 37. Maybe it was because of just BYU felt that they were in control for the majority of the game, and so they kind of really weren't into that second half. And then really on the other side, Demon obviously leading the way with that offense, and just the way that offense hums. Richie Saunders, his ability to space the floor, score on multiple levels as well. And Demon, it's going to come down, as we've talked about with him before, it's just what that shot looks like. 2 of 6 from 3, that sequence that you spoke of. Steven, I thought that was fantastic, what you want to continue to see from him. He had that turnaround jumper to start the game as well. I am more of a believer in his jumper. It may take, a couple years to really get to where you want it, but it looks good. He's confident.
Yeah.
It's just the production hasn't always been there, and usually that kind of comes with time.
I personally don't see Tanji as an NBA guy. I think he'll play in summer league, but I just think he's going to have a solid career overseas, getting buckets. Nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
Shout out to the chat, Jam. They're asking Richie Saunders draft this year, go back, and he's had a tremendous year. He is a junior.
Go back.
Personally, I think he should go back and go play with
AJ.
Exactly. He knows what he's supposed to do.
Get that bag, man.
Yes.
Love it. Okay, let's move on to today's games. Another really, really fun slate to kind of figure out who else is making the Sweet 16. Steven, what's your kind of must-see game of the day? If you only have time for one, maybe two games to watch today, which are the two that you're specifically carving out time for?
First off, if you have time to watch only one or two games today, I feel bad for you. Like, this is a tough decision. I personally, with the players that I like, I'm paying close attention to Maryland and Colorado State. Neat Clifford is a very good player. And shout out to you, Metcalf. I really enjoyed yesterday when you were talking about him, that Aaron Wiggins comparison that you brought up. I think that is like chef's kiss, spot on the money. And then on the opposite side of that, you got Derek Queen, who is making a real case to be maybe more than just even a top 7, the top 5 player. Maybe he is making a case to go even higher. And some players are probably going to suffer. Here's looking at you, Ace Bailey, from out of sight, out of mind. Like, you're really going to have to bring it in combine season, because he's even a little bit more polarizing than I think he probably gets discussed, and really doesn't even get discussed when we're talking about top players. He's almost kind of shoehorned into a spot. Like, let's talk about our top 5. We talk about Cooper. We talk about Dylan. We kind of move on from Mason, and then we talk about some other guys. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but I'm paying attention to that game. And if I can throw in a second game, I'll leave some meat on the bone here. I want to bring up Florida and UConn, because I think that this is a styles make fight thing with UConn. That their strength really comes from like their wings and forwards, where if you had to pick a weakness on Florida, that's probably it. But Florida's got the guard play and the big man play that UConn typically is stronger at. This year they don't really got it. I'm a big fan of solo ball in the long run, but I mean, you got to look at what Walter Clayton Jr. is doing this year and talk about a guy who's taking advantage of draft stock opportunity. He's really doing that. And then Florida has like a four-headed monster in that front court rotation that I think UConn's really going to struggle with.
Jam, what about you? What game or two is really kind of leaping off the screen for you? That's like, I'm putting the phone away. I'm, volume on max. I'm dialing 100% into this.
Absolutely. First, Steven, I'm going to go ahead and take the layup that you're giving me. I appreciate that. You clearing the lane out and allowing me to score here. So I'm going to go ahead and go with this Florida and UConn matchup. So I'm really excited for that. Walter Clayton Jr., I know a lot of fans know ceilings. I think he's someone that can be a first rounder. Him going against UConn in that defense, I'm really curious to see what they do defensively. Is going to be solo ball. What exactly they're going to do defensively? They're going to try to get some more size and some wing guys on him as well. And then, Steven, as you brought up, how exactly does UConn match up with the not only just the depth that Florida has in the front court, particularly with the bigs, but just the versatility they have with Condon, and also Hall and how do you call it? Rubin? Yeah. Yes, and Hanglin as well. So they have just multiple looks that they can give that UConn team from the perimeter with the bigs and down low as well. So I'm looking forward to see how they do. And also Liam McNeely, obviously, can he rebound, have a good performance here? I think the stock for me personally has been a little bit up and down this season. So it'd be good to see what he looks like against a tough Florida team. And then real quick, just the other matchup, I'll take another obvious one here with Duke and Baylor, of course. Like, how could you not? 2 top 10 picks more than likely with VJ and Coop, obviously, as well. Then going back to history between them a couple years ago at City of Palms when I'm sure everyone's probably seen it by now, the clip when Cooper's at the free throw line telling VJ he's not like that. And the past history with them possibly both going to Duke together. They visited together, and then VJ commits to Baylor afterwards, and Roach on the other side. So a lot of storylines in there outside of just the typical matchups as well. So I think it'll be a lot going on there.
The other game I really want to kind of highlight here is Illinois versus Kentucky.
Yes.
Mainly because who knows what Illinois team we're going to get. And if we get a fun one, that game is going to rock. I think it's going to be really high pace, a lot of scoring, a lot of big names to keep an eye on, a lot of fun individual matchups. We'll get into some of those in a minute here. But that for me is kind of the one where I'm really, really excited for that to kind of tip off on its own in its own window. Obviously, it'll overlap with the St. Mary's Alabama game, but coming up right after the Baylor Duke game, I think these first three games of the day, being UConn, Florida, going into Baylor versus Duke, going into Illinois versus Kentucky, is a heck of a way to start your Sunday. When we look at some potential upset alerts, the first two that come to mind for me are Illinois over Kentucky, and then St. Mary's over Alabama. Alabama kind of struggled a little bit in their first game, ended up pulling away and being okay. But St. Mary's is a really good team, one of the best defensive and rebounding teams in the country, and they don't foul much. And that was one of the big ways that Alabama kind of got through that first game was Mark Sears getting to the line a lot. I think St. Mary's could give Alabama some real issues here. Jam, when we're looking at upsets, any kind of popping for you?
I'm going to say New Mexico against Michigan State. And I say that just because Donovan Dent and that Nelly Jr. Joseph combination, Dent his ability to be able to create paint touches at will, the playmaking, the shot making. Joseph provides them as a consistent double threat down low with his strength and his toughness, play finishing, and his ability to protect the rim as well. Then you have True Washington out there as a supporting scorer too. So I do think when those guys are on, they can really present some challenges to Michigan State. And I'm just really excited. I'm hoping the matchup, at least we'll be able to see consistently Donovan Dent and Jace Richardson. I think that'll be a really impressive individual matchup with a lot of NBA eyes on it as well. And, two legitimate NBA prospects.
Steven, what about you?
I'm going to touch back on Colorado State and Maryland. I know that the Crab Five is on fire recently. I know that Maryland kind of struggled out the gate. They had to calm down, take a deep breath, and feed the ball to Julian Reese. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that in the same way against Colorado State. And Colorado State won their game without a big Neat Clifford game as far as scoring goes. He was big in a lot of other regard, but I'm hoping to see Neat pop off. He might overthrow Maryland if he has one of his kind of patent, trustworthy offensive bursts, as well as the defense that Colorado State can play as well. The Crab Five, they're a fun team. They're really, really fun. I think a lot's going to need to go on the back of Jacoby Gillaspie this game, as well as Miguel. I think those two are going to be the stories for success for Maryland. But it's going to be fun to see how Derek Queen, the best player on the floor between both of those two teams, how he fares against Colorado State, their defense, their front court, and how he can utilize his strengths, whether that's like post scoring or facilitating, if he can use that and leverage a victory against Colorado State, who I think is on upset alert right now.
Fair enough. All right, let's pivot over into some of the biggest prospects to kind of keep an eye on. Today, there are a lot of them. First off, obviously basically all of Duke. I think they should kind of just dominate Baylor, but specifically in that game, I'm really excited to keep an eye on the Con Knippel and VJ Edgecombe matchup. I'm assuming that's probably how they'll align, and I think that's going to be an awesome test for Con going up against one of the elite premier perimeter defenders. I hope that Baylor doesn't go into one of their really ineffective zones. I'm kind of guessing they're going to throw in a lot of 1-3-1, 2-3 stuff that doesn't really work, but I don't think they really have the size to defend straight up man. So that's kind of a bummer. I'm hoping they at least start with us. Give us 10 minutes of Con and VJ going one-on-one. Well, not one-on-one, but matched up against each other. I think that'll be really fun. In that Illinois-Kentucky game, I think there are a lot of really fascinating individual matchups with Kasper Siakashonis on Lamont Butler and vice versa, Will Riley and Otega Owe, Tomislav Ivicic and Amari Williams. A lot of skill, a lot of versatility, experience versus youth. That's going to be a really fun test across the board. Steven, you mentioned Derek Queen and Nick Clifford. All year, Queen's biggest games have kind of come against these teams that don't have a premier big on the other side. And I would kind of classify Colorado State's biggest weakness as their front court. So I'm curious to see how they kind of deal with that. And even if they get a little creative and maybe throw Nick Clifford on Derek Queen at times to try and get under him, try and really disrupt his rhythm, make him uncomfortable. Donovan Dent, Jace Richardson, another kind of fun guard matchup there. I'd be pretty surprised if we see them kind of defending each other or matched up against each other directly too much, but two really, really exciting guards. And then finally for me, Carter Bryant, just dealing with the veteran wings on Oregon. Bryant was incredible in their first round matchup. Someone in the chat asked Will Riley versus Carter Bryant. For me right now, it's Carter Bryant.
Yep.
Will Riley not far behind. I still have both of them first round guys. Carter Bryant would be like top 20 though. Will Riley in like that 20 to 30 range for me. Enough for me. Jam, top prospects that you're excited to keep an eye on? Anyone I missed?
Just a sneaky matchup I'm looking forward to in that Ole Miss game. I think Stephen will like this. I want to see Malik Dia matched up against Joshua Jefferson. See what that looks like. And I think two very versatile, long bigs who really do have some legitimate NBA upside. So that's one that I'm really looking forward to. And just more of a player-wise, as an X factor in that, going back to that Colorado State-Maryland game, I really am interested to see what Rodney Rice does for that Maryland team. I think he is that team's X factor, and they will need his consistent perimeter shooting and scoring as well. And then if Lake on the other end, if he can kind of duplicate his performance that he had and support Nick Clifford, but that's going to be one hell of a game.
Steven, what about you?
Well, if we're going to get in sicko mode real quick, I'm really curious to see what the Sean Padula and Curtis Jones matchup looks like.
There we go.
As well. That's going to be a fun one. But if we're touching on top prospects like Metcalf, I'm so happy that you brought up the Carter Bryant versus Oregon, because Oregon's like a sneaky big team outside of their point guard, their tiny point guard. I'm really interested to see how he plays and how much he is relied upon. Like, how many minutes does he get against this team? Because if he gets his typical like 18 to 20 minutes per game, it's going to drive me crazy, but they're going to be the most dynamic. I just wish he had a bigger role, because I think the one question that you have about Carter Bryant is, does he play with that same amount of energy and intensity on the defensive end if he has a larger role? You know what I mean? What does his defense look like if he's leaned on more heavily? And I think that might be a fair question. I would just love to see him answer it, but he had a fantastic opening game. And then if we're looking at, you mentioned that St. Mary's game, this could be a big Mark Sears game. You know, this could be big for his draft stock, a guy who we've talked about several times here at No Ceilings on how, if he should be drafted, if so, where. I think if he has a big game against St. Mary's, NBA executives would look at that as a big win for his draft stock, and then seeing where he goes. The biggest game, though, Metcalf, that is for prospects, you touched on it, in my opinion, is that Illinois-Kentucky game, where I would love to see Kasparis, like, just please be – I want to see a bigger scoring outburst, and that might be selfish of me for winning for Illinois' part. I just would love to see him have a big scoring game, but he's got the requisite teammates to allow him to facilitate. And if he's not going to score a lot, I would like to see the efficiency be there. You know what I mean? Like, if he's not going to shoot a lot, be efficient. But you can be a little bit less efficient if you're taking more shots and still carrying your team. I just want to see him selfishly answer questions that I have for him. But I think Will Riley has a lot to gain from this. He had a big first round game, could be another big second round game. I'm with you, Metcalf. Like, I'm really starting to buy into his stock. You look at how much weight and strength that he's gained from where he started the year to where he is this year. That's a good upward trajectory for him. But 6'9" with a strap, and good effort and energy. Like he's really proving himself.
Then just kind of a couple of other names. That UConn Florida game, Liam McNeely make a shot challenge. I'm really interested to see kind of how they use Will Richard and who they have him matched up on, whether it's Caravan or McNeely. I mean, it doesn't really matter because then they have Elijah Martin to throw on the other guy, and Florida's just a wagon right now. But there are a lot of names in that game, and Liam McNeely's the probably highest prospect right now. But whether it's Thomas Hawk or Alex Condon or Walter Clayton or Will Richard or Elijah Martin or Alex Caravan, it feels like there are a lot of guys who could kind of work their way into that fringe first round, second round, and then kind of outperforming wherever they end up getting drafted. Duke, obviously, Kaman Malawach, huge opportunity for him to really make an impact, really impose himself and dominate in terms of size, because he's going to be the biggest guy out there by far. He should have a huge game.
Over under 8.5 points for Malawach.
I'm gonna go over.
I'm gonna go over, and I'm gonna say almost all of them are off of like offensive rebounds.
Okay.
I think he'll mix a couple con lobs in there, but yeah, I think that a lot of it's going to be dominating on the offensive glass for sure.
Okay.
And then finally, with that Alabama game, Steven, you kind of brought up Mark Sears, but also LeBaron Philon. He didn't have a big scoring game in that first one, but the decision-making, the ball security, the overall creation, and the defense was really good. So if he can kind of replicate that with a little bit more scoring to kind of help take some of the pressure off of Sears, not let St. Mary's defense kind of load up on Sears and some other guys, I think that'll do absolute wonders and could be a really good way for him to kind of springboard and maybe start building back up some of that draft stock that's been waning a little bit here down the stretch. But fellas, this was awesome. As always, should be another really fun day of games. We will be coming back live before the games on Thursday. Once we have a Sweet 16 kind of set, we'll recap today's games over on Thursday, preview Thursday's slate, and rinse, wash, repeat throughout the weekend. But we have a ton of awesome content still up at NoCeilingsNBA.com. Go check it out if you are still looking to get prepared and figure out who some of these teams are. Maxwell's tournament preview piece was fantastic. It went up the Monday before, or last Monday, I should say. We also have a ton of in-depth deep dives on basically all of these guys. And then over on the YouTube channel, for shout out everyone watching live, participating in the chat. You guys are the best. And while you're here, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And over on the YouTube channel, Rucker's been working his butt off putting up the season end highlights for a lot of guys. So if there's someone that you're really interested in that's piqued your interest during the tournament, odds are at least their midseason highlights are up, but their end of season highlights are probably up there too. And if they aren't yet, they will be soon. But until next time, he is Stephen Gillaspie. He is Jam Hines. Fellas, thank you. I'm Tyler Metcalf. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. But until next time, see ya.